Welcome to the EXCELcast. I'm Jonathan Kuskiski from the EXCEL program here at the University of Michigan, and it's a pleasure today to be talking with Iqbal Khan, Director. Thank you so much for making time to talk with us today.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
So you're here, you've been in Michigan for a week.
Yes, I've been here a week. This is my penultimate day here, unfortunately. It's been an extraordinary week. I've been over at State for the weekend, giving talks and doing workshops with students, and basically having conversations all day, every day, for the last 5 days. And actually that is my vision of heaven. It's wonderful.
Wonderful.
It's great to step out of the professional world for a while, to come to somewhere as beautiful as this, and to just be given the time to reflect with young people who are at the beginning of their journey, extraordinary people, but they're asking the biggest questions. And it's just wonderful to have to respond and think about things and listen to them.
That's great. Well, we're thankful that you've made time for this virtual discussion in the midst of all of your other discussions.
Yes.
Of course, you're based in the UK now, correct?
Yes.
In London,
yes.
Yeah. And you've had an amazing career. You've had some big productions with the Royal Shakespeare Company, Much Ado About Nothing and Othello, amongst many others productions. And one of the, there's so many things we could talk about, but one of the themes that we want to explore is this idea of what qualifies one to take on the next thing in their careers. What qualifies you to take on a new role? And I guess part of that must be defining yourself that you are qualified before you have the opportunity.
Yeah. It's a vexed question, and it has been all my life actually, about what qualifies you to lead a room anyway, of any description, and then how are you perceived and valued by your contemporaries, by the mainstream? I've always found that a very, very difficult thing to. It's a live question for me, and has been all my life. Now, what does qualify me, first of all, I think, is my conviction about the work I'm doing. It's the purity and love I have for the subjects that I'm exploring. I think the most important qualification to be working in this industry and to be working with these things is the purity and intensity of your relationship to the material. Now, everything else is about negotiating with other people, finding a clarity of expression and interaction with the room that you find yourself in. There are lots of strategies and techniques that you can learn to help you with that. But what has to come first is this voice within that says what you're doing and what you're feeling about something is essential. It's important. It needs to be given expression. So that's and it's a provisional thing. Every single day you're working on that, and you're being challenged by that. Every time you step into a new arena, I think you have to ask that question over again and again and again. You must never get complacent about it. And in terms of the relationship with the mainstream, I think that's quite hard, particularly as an other of some description in the UK, a British Asian theatre director. I've always, for the first 10 years of my life, I never did any work with either Asians or black actors, or just because the work I was interested in, there aren't many of them doing that sort of work. And also, I was very keen not to be perceived as an actor or as a director, as an Asian actor or as an Asian theatre director. I wanted to be an artist of excellence first and foremost. But the more I've moved through my industry, the more I've found that people will privilege you if you can identify a certain kind of resource through a box-ticking exercise. And I've exploited that, but essentially it sort of, every time I've had to kind of respond to that kind of thing, I feel like there's something that's failed in the system. If that's the way I qualify to get a job.
I see.
So when I first worked at the RSC, and I did Much Ado About Nothing, and I was invited to do this production, and it was suggested that an Indian version of the play might be a good version. I made very clear with the artistic director at the time that was this a requirement of employment, that you were asking me to do an Indian production because you think that I am expert on all things Indian. As it turns out, I'm not. I've never been to India. I had to research as much as anyone else would about any other place.
Yeah.
But he said, no, it wasn't. It wasn't a requirement. They wanted me there because they wanted me there, and I could do any version I wanted. That was essential to me. To understand that was the nature of the engagement that I had with them. And then, I mean, subsequently, I did do a modern day Indian take on the play, and I invested in it and loved it, but it wasn't dictated to me that was how it should be done.
Okay, let me ask you a couple quick questions on that. First of all, what's one interesting thing you've already pointed out is the difference between external and internal qualifications. So the external qualifications, things like credentials or certifications of some kind, we can use those to bolster confidence, right? But you're speaking actually about the internal processes that we go through, right? To prepare ourselves to stand up and make those decisions.
Yeah.
And sometimes they might be challenging. I can only imagine the first opportunity to direct with the Royal Shakespeare Company. It's a big opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So how did you harness, or can you give us an example of harnessing all of those resources that you spoke about, that you've cultivated in the moment when you have the opportunity and you have to decide, if I do this, if I stand up and I push back, what's it gonna mean?
Yeah. Okay. Let me give you an example of the something like the first day of rehearsals at the RSC's Much Ado About Nothing. Now, I spent my whole life dreaming about being at the RSC, and even though, you know, for the 10 or so years beforehand, I'd sort of I'd given reasons for why the RSC wasn't the right institution, because it wasn't hiring people like me, etc. To be given that opportunity was to be given the opportunity to live out my dream. Now, I needed, in that moment, and with my company, I needed our work to feel like it wasn't reverential. I needed to feel that we were all free to do what we wished in that room. So I needed to kind of liberate us. So in my talk with them, the first thing I said to everyone is that we need to kind of kill the master. We need to destroy the idea of the RSC. We need to ensure that we are not. I was actually much more explicit in my language. I won't do that here. But that's what we needed to do. We needed to begin afresh. We needed to sort of not feel like we were serving anyone or anything. We needed to be honest to our conversations. Now, that's a part of what I need to do, as much as what I'm trying to enable for them is I need to feel like my voice is free and out there. So I just need to leap at the beginning. There's very little preparation for moments like that. All you can rely on is, I've done this before. I've been given this opportunity. There's nothing anybody else can do to help you now. Then it's about you kind of just leaping. And then helping others leap.
Right. Well, I was going to ask about that, this sort of collaborative process. Theater is such a collaborative art form by its nature. And so how does that, I imagine it plays in a big way, right? When you have a team that you're leading, you have, you know, in some cases a few people, but in other cases like this, you have many people who are involved in the production who all have to come behind this vision, right? So how do you help them feel empowered, I guess, over this bold move that you're taking?
It's everything. You see, it's interesting you use the phrase like, how do you help them come behind this vision? It often isn't that. In my case, I think it can be for other directors. They sort of have a very worked out, almost sort of theatre essay, three-dimensional essay that they're presenting, and so everybody else has to become skilled at telling, communicating the details of that essay. For me, it really does evolve from moment to moment. I might have a beginning, I might have convictions, I might have a direction of travel, but then the first thing I need to do is I need to listen. I need to get a sense of who the people in the room are that I'm working with, so that I can be as useful and as specific in my conversations with them. I mean, I am interested about everybody in that room. I've hired them because I think they're expert actors, perhaps, or musicians, whatever. But I've also hired them because I think they are specifically interesting. There is something, there's something in the texture of their minds that excites me, and I want that range of experience in the room. So it's then about me actually investing in them and being enriched by their conversations. And my greatest responsibility is to select the best idea in the room, not to have the best idea in the room. So that's all very idealistic. Often in a process, you might have to, you have to make decisions and you have to shortcut things. I suppose you get better and better at that because you've had more and more experience, and so you know what will work. If you've listened to them carefully, then what you hope is that your manner of encouraging them or your manner of kind of accelerating them through a process will work more specifically because you're not being generic. You're not using the same voice for every single person. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Okay, so I mean it's making what you just said is making me think about collaboration. I mean, you actually frame what you're talking about is actually sort of an ultimately collaborative approach to direction, which is great. And so, okay, let's fast forward. So you make it through this process, and I'm sure it's very exciting. Your first opportunity is exciting. You have another opportunity with Othello, which is a groundbreaking Royal Shakespeare Company production. So how does, or maybe I should ask it this way, do you find that having a success, does that help you take more risk the next time around? Does it make it easier or harder?
Yeah, it's the second album syndrome, isn't it? There are two things about that, I suppose, isn't it? Which is, on the one hand, if you've had a success, then the pressure's on because you're not an unknown anymore. You're kind of responding to a certain level of excellence or value, and you don't want to disappoint. So there's that extra pressure. But you have built a relationship and the trust. So you can then, with the second one, maybe the second one isn't so much about qualifying. Your first job was essentially about doing something with integrity and doing it well, but also it's about qualifying for another opportunity. It's the first steps in a relationship. What you're hoping is that with the second production, that you have the trust to risk, that you have the license to challenge all that you need to challenge, and I did feel that with Othello. I mean, the production came out of a particular provocation from the actor who was playing Othello. He'd written an essay 10 years before about how he felt the play was essentially a racist play. I didn't agree with him, I hasten to add. And the dynamic of that conversation was welcomed by the RSC. And then I had another bright idea, which was to sort of, again, to complicate or to nuance the racial politics in the play by casting potentially a black Iago. Now, it was very important, I think. I mean, I could have just gone, this is what I want to do, RSC, please come along with me. But what I chose to do was to do a workshop with both a black and a white Iago, doing exactly the same scenes, essentially being directed in exactly the same way. And then hoping that what that would demonstrate is that the choice of the black Iago wouldn't pervert the structure of the essential DNA of the play. That would be retained. It would throw a fresh light on things, but it wouldn't distort things. And so we did that workshop week and showed that to the artistic directors and producers at the RSC, and I think they were very, very happy and reassured by what they saw. And I needed that, I think we all needed that, because we were stepping into uncharted territory, and we needed to feel not just that they were blindly allowing us to do it, but that they were consciously encouraging and understanding the steps that we were taking.
Wow. Okay, so that process is inherently collaborative in many ways as well. Must be to make those decisions.
I mean, and the thing is, I mean, collaboration is obviously fantastic. It's never equal, is it? I mean, you are ultimately someone's got to lead, and someone's got to follow. But it's about how passive that relationship is or isn't. And for me, I'm trying to sort of encourage a really kind of to give the people I'm working with agency, to sort of make them feel like they can affect the course of things. And that's not just pretty rhetoric.
Yeah.
It's actually the case that they can affect the decisions I make, design-wise or otherwise. You know.
So in this case, this is a significant, it's the first production of Royal Shakespeare Company with the Black Iago, right? So
Yes.
yes. So I'm thinking about the young directors that are watching this or have interacted with you while you've been here.
Yes.
And there's this question of taking risks and being groundbreaking, and to do that in Shakespeare, you know, or to do it with the Royal Shakespeare Company like the Royal Shakespeare Company, it seems something that might be way far in their future. And I'm just curious, you know, thinking about, you know, talking to them specifically for a moment, you know, what kind of thoughts or advice would you give to them about, you know, building some of this internal confidence that you spoke about leading and also finding ways to break through? I mean, I think, for example, directing Shakespeare, for some people, they feel like, you know, that might not be something that you have to be qualified to a certain degree to do it. And so how much of that comes from, you know, the training, how much comes from it from doing and practicing?
Yeah, I think that's a very important thing. I mean, the young directors out there and others have to remember that the texts that we're working on were never meant to be read. They're performance texts. They're guides to performance. So the way you really understand them is, as you say, is to do it, is to embody the language. And it's much easier when it's sounded. It is, as we all know, it's quite hard to read. And we have to remember as well that the Shakespearean text that we have, were never presented in that form. When we sort of have a compilation that editors have constructed, which is a much bigger thing than the 2 hours traffic that is described in Romeo and Juliet. And remember also, all you generations to come, the plays will survive your experiment. You know, they're still on the bookshelves. Yeah. They will survive your intervention. Intervene. They can. Our understanding of that which remains will always be enriched by these sorts of experiments. So you know, do what you will, just so long as it's passionate and coherent. You know, you decide yourself and with your community of actors that which you care about, that which you want to articulate, and then do it. You know, like I say, these things will survive you in your experiments. They'll survive me.
Surely.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so can we just, for a moment here, before we run out of time, I would love to take a step back and hear a little bit more about your personal journey and your story. So you grew up in Birmingham, in the UK?
I grew up in Birmingham in the UK.
Thank you very much. Alabama,
yes, that's right. That's right. I've hidden my American accent very well. Yes, I grew up there. It's an industrial town when I was growing up, very grey. I don't know how that compares to Birmingham, Alabama, but you know that's what Birmingham in the UK was like. It was a lot of first-generation Pakistanis had come to Birmingham, so there was a big community of Pakistanis there. But I was very, very keen to leave it. It felt like a very insular place. We grew up in extreme poverty. My father died when I was very young, but my second eldest brother was instinctively curious and sort of a bit of a Renaissance man. And so he read everything, he listened to everything, we watched everything on TV, you know, so opera, Dylan, Pink Floyd, Frankenstein, Tolkien, it was all available to us, and we did it all. So there was no lack of connection with different areas of artistic experience. The only thing that was lacking for us was the experience of actually going and seeing stuff, because we couldn't afford it. But I was keen to kind of get out of Birmingham, because there didn't seem to be very many people that dug opera, for instance. Well, you know, the conversations about opera were shared between my brothers and I and that was it. And I just wanted to escape, and I did. I went to Cambridge eventually, and studied maths there for a while, got ill, for a long time, and then rethought everything, and then went and did physics at Imperial College, but joined the Drama Society, and in that rehearsal room had a kind of Damascus conversion, as I recognised the way conversation should be conducted in the world. You know, that room was a kind of metaphor for how societies should be constructed. It felt incredibly significant, and it felt like that's something that I wanted to and could pursue. And the rest of my life has demonstrated that maybe that was a good choice. But I did run away to the circus. I left my degree course. My mother and my brothers were astounded, devastated, but at the same time tried to understand. So yeah, that's the potted history.
Wow. Well, I mean, that makes sense because I was reading an interview
Yes.
before that you had mentioned that maybe if you hadn't become a theatre director, you would have become a theoretical physicist or an opera...
Or an operatic baritone,
yeah.
or a professional cricketer. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure everyone's in the same position who's watching this. Is that there are so many things that compel you. That's the wonderful thing about being a human being. Is that there are so many avenues available to us. And just trust that you'll find the one that you need to find. And don't limit yourself to the one that you're traveling on today. You can change. You can switch.
That's great advice. And I also imagine it seems like it takes quite a bit of fearlessness and courage. Maybe not fearlessness. I mean, there might be fear there, but courage for sure to make those decisions at that point. And to pivot in that way.
I suppose it does. I think it also takes a certain kind of innocence, a certain kind of belief in the future, belief in change, that you can leap into a divergently different way of doing things. That you're not being too safe, too practical. I mean, it seems to me at the time that I've entered into the context in America at the moment, it could be viewed as a crisis, but it could also be viewed as an opportunity to look at things that have been ignored, to not be complacent about the conversations that have happened in the past, and to embrace this as a possibility for growth and an opportunity for reconfiguring how we conduct the most important conversations that need to happen now.
Well, it's a very inspiring perspective to take on all of this, and it seems like something that has cut through your whole experience.
Yeah.
You must have this mindset, right, in order to make some of these decisions and to feel, and to take the risk that some people would see risk is an interesting thing, because risk is a lot about perception.
Yeah.
Risk is, a large risk to someone might seem like a smaller risk to someone else, depending on what they've gone through and their mindset. And so, I really appreciate your positivity and perspective and optimism.
Thank you very much. Well, and the important thing is, I think risk is essential to growth.
Yeah.
You don't get growth without risking. It's a business model, but it's also a creative model. It's a model for humanity's progress. You have to risk to grow.
And it seems to me, you know this more than I do, that theatre, as sort of one of the great ways to really examine the human condition.
Yeah.
There's an opportunity there to look and reframe and to be positive and to help other people think in new ways about their situation.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for making the time to talk with us today. It's been a wonderful conversation. Look forward to having you work more with our students. It's been great to have you on campus.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.